Hello, I am Gray, and I'm here with a new series under the Serial Killers Academy podcast, GrindHaus on 42nd Street. This is just an introduction episode. It's basically a way for you guys to get to know me and my friend a little bit more before we actually do our first episode recording, which is going to be Monday night. A few weeks ago, I posted on the channel that we were going to do something movie related. I didn't know if it was going to be movie reviews or if we were going to have deep dives or even if it was going to be a YouTube show or if it was going to be on the podcast. And actually, even right now, although we're recording it as a podcast, more than likely it's going to end up on both platforms. We'll have the video podcast on, YouTube and other servers, but still be able to put it on Spotify. So you can pick how you would want to hear us. So, of course, I'm not doing this by myself because the last time I tried to do a podcast by myself for 40 minutes, I couldn't talk for 2 days after. I don't know how people do it. I'm joined by a good friend of mine, and his name's Wolfman. Are you there?
Yep. What's up, podcast world?
So I want to hand it over to him. I want him to give just a, an introduction to himself, because you guys obviously know me. You've been listening to me now for about a month and a half, but you don't know him. And I feel like this show is going to work better when you know both of us. So there you go. What do you want to tell him?
So as you heard, my name is Wolfman. I'm really excited to co-host this show with Gray. A mutual friend of ours actually not too long ago told us we should be friends, and it's kind of funny. We were just chatting and whatnot, and now we're hosting this show together, and it's pretty crazy how things work out.
Yeah.
So a little about me, horror movies, metal, punk, and ska music, and video games, and just the 80s in general kind of just really shaped me into the man I am today in a nutshell. I mean, good and bad. I mean, lots of good things in there. Like movies and video games were my retreat from reality growing up. So I really dove deep in that. And it's just weird how movies and stuff will like bring people together. It's like crazy, like that little world that we live in. Like I own over 2,000 movies. I have countless video game systems. Like it's just, too much. I mean, I take pictures one day and we'll put them up on the site. Like I just have a lot of stuff that's just so much fun to like collect and go through.
I think it allows us to be comfortable with each other. Like it's something that we can all get along with. It's hard, it's hard to kind of meet friends when you're into what would be considered counterculture stuff or weird stuff. But like luckily, and through our conversations, we found out like how similar we are. Like it's eerie how similar we are.
Yeah, it's really weird. So like I was bullied a ton, and I was actually jumped a few times like when I'm growing up as a kid for just being the weird kid and not being super social.
Yeah.
Like just liking the heavy music and the gore and the cool stuff just wasn't cool back then. So like I'm in the tail end of my 30s, so like I'm a little older than some people, but still not too old to be like ancient, And I moved around a lot too, especially into my adulthood. So it was really hard making friends and holding on to them. Like it wasn't until I started playing sports that I really started getting respect from other people, but I still didn't really fit in because I was playing sports, but I wasn't like a jock, I was still into the creepy weird stuff and the horror and the heavy music and stuff. It wasn't like it is today, kids growing up, it's just how it was. And then, so I started getting to become a bigger guy, so I got bullied less. So it's kind of weird how that worked out,
But there's like, I know it's going to sound weird, but because like I was a heavyset kid, and then when I got taller, I was always bigger, especially for my age. And do people not associate with you because of the weird stuff, or are they intimidated by you because of the weird stuff? Like I used to wear like a Marilyn Manson shirt to school, and I don't know if more people were like intimidated to talk to me, whether because I was big or because I was into obviously Marilyn Manson, he's satanic, or, and it's bullshit anyways. Nowadays, I don't think it's like that. But, we grew up in that time period where, it was a big deal.
I think people are just scared of what they don't understand. So, like, where I grew up, it was just predominantly white at the time. So there wasn't, like, a lot of black kids or Spanish kids or whatever, like, around. And then people were very, like, cookie cutter type, like that typical white family crap you get on like regular TV. That's how everyone was. Even though it was like I grew up in the Jersey Shore area, but like where that was, it was just like if you were into weird stuff, like or the horror. Like for instance, I could bring up a story. My mom like used to work at Florist like growing up, and she went to this one town, and it was like one of those like small towns on the shore where like they had like the little um you know like center town type, seeing movies type place, and then everyone like would visit. They have like festivals and stuff, and we'd go in there and we're wearing like our Mega t-shirts or what. I used to wear a lot of like Guar t-shirts and stuff like so it was into some crazy so me and my buddy would walk around this town and we'd get like stared at. It was just like a movie, you know what I mean? Like just like leave it to Beaverville we're in, and we're these like metalhead punk kids, like not like crazy dressed, but wearing like camo shorts and just normal hair at the time. Now I have mohawks and stuff. I've been rocking a mohawk for like almost 20 years now. It's kind of ridiculous, but.
And I don't think, like, I hate to bring it up, but I don't think Columbine did any favors for any of us. Because if we wanted to wear black band shirts like Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson, Typo Negative, or even like your punk shirts like your Bad Religion, No Effects.
Yeah.
Just wearing that shirt, you could have a normal haircut, you could wear jeans or shorts, but just having like that band shirt almost like put a target on you. It's like, oh well, you got to be careful of this person. It's like, dude, like it's not. I don't even want to say it's fashion. It's not fashion. It's just what we're into. We like to support the things that we like.
Yeah, it's just weird how that was.
I know the feeling of getting the stares. I was, in a small town as well, a big football town. So a lot of wholesome people. On Friday night, everyone went to the football games and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It was almost like that Nada Surf song, Popular. It's like, oh, well, the jock, he drives his little Camaro and like he dates the head cheerleader, and I'm sitting under the bleachers, like trying to get cigarettes from people. You know what I mean? Like that's the group that I was in. But that's where I was comfortable. You know?
I was friendly with some of the kids like that, but I never was in the group like that. Like it was like me and my two best friends up until my parents split and we moved and I had to go to another town. When I was 14, I would think it was. So like up until then, from like I was like 9 or so to 14, it was just the three of us. We hung out all the time. And then the one kid, he wasn't really into the stuff we were, but we had sports in common. So like we just played hockey relentlessly, like all the time. That's all we did, like in the streets. Just played hockey all day. And then me and my other friend, we were into the video games and metal and punk and we listened to all that stuff. He wasn't really, but the sports is what brought all three of us together. But we were our own little group. But they were 2 years younger than me, so the kids my age, there were some like skater kids that were in the area, but they were like too cool like to hang out because I was I was like the fat kid.
Yeah,
I didn't fit in with them. But it's weird how when I got older, how like I said earlier, like when I started getting bigger in high school, playing football, and then eventually lacrosse when I got out of high school, and ice hockey, the bullying kind of died down and it wasn't that bad. And then I found roller derby incidentally. It's kind of weird, which is indirectly how me and you know each other.
Yeah,
it was just kind of funny through a mutual friend that I met playing and traveling and that. So I started that in like 2006, and I finally retired in 2018. I coached, refed, and I was on a men's team for 5 years. So I made some friends. Even then, it's still kind of weird because that you bring in all people from all sorts of life, and you still kind of feel like an outsider in a way. I don't feel like I belong in a lot of places with a lot of people. I still on the outside, no matter what groups.
But see, I think like once you warm up to people, though, like and I've mentioned her before. My sister, she goes by Gore. She has been into roller derby for quite some time now, and I remember the day that she wanted to get into it because she had a mutual friend who was doing it, and she's really progressed. And I'm not saying it because like she's my sister, you know what I mean, but like from the awards and accolades that she's gotten, I know she's good. And it's something that she likes to do, and I know a lot of the friends that she met are friends till this day, and a lot of them even listen to the shows. You know what I mean? So a lot of her friends became some of my friends, between Derby and stuff like that. And I think like when you first meet someone or you first like get introduced to a group of people, you're kind of a little reserved because most of your life you've kind of been shut down for the things you like. But I feel like roller derby is kind of like a counterculture thing where it's a bunch of outsiders. Like you're not really getting a whole lot of the high school jocks playing roller derby.
No, but you still get a little segregation. It's weird how
you do.
roller derby works out, though. It's funny, but it's less. Yeah.
It's weird that we always have to break up into subgroups, and I don't know if that's because it was like learned from school, like the clique mentality, But at least I feel like it's not as bad as it was when we were in school. So,
yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's definitely not as bad, but it's just weird how society we always end up breaking into groups, like no matter what we do,
Oh,
But like, there's a little more leeway as you get older. There's not as much childhood mentality where you don't have to be like, ew, those people are into that. We don't associate them so much. You know what I mean?
right.
It's
Or
not,
your
it's not
friends
that bad.
tell you, like, oh, well, we're into this, and this guy over here, he's not into it, so, like, he's not cool. Like, we can make our own judgment call on who we think's cool and who we like to hang
Yeah.
out with. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I was
It's-
just say roller derby actually helped me like loosen up a little bit. It brought out like the best of me and the worst of me all at the same time because I'm super competitive. So you get a lot of, especially in roller derby, it's really that's where a lot of the split comes. It comes down to the competitive aspect
yeah.
where you have the people that just want to hang out and skate a little bit, and then the people that really want to win. And it's hard when you have teams that are like doing very well and being very competitive, and then you have a team, especially we're in the same league or whatever, they're more of a casual, and it got hard, but
No, but it's the ones who
but
want to just get
overall,
together and have fun, but then
yeah,
you keep seeing the same teams win, and you're like, dude, I just
Yeah.
want to be on a team that's like has that kind of structure and like that mentality. And no, I know I've seen players who
no,
played-
but I was gonna say overall, we all still got along for the most part. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when we weren't playing, it helped me get out of my shell a little bit, like playing with those people, whether I was coaching or reffing or being a player myself. And then now doing this podcast, I got a couple things going on. We got this podcast. I also make YouTube videos, and I stream on Twitch video games. So I have those going on. I have Silver Bullet Streaming. They're both on YouTube, and Twitch is my name on there. And then I have @Bullet Streaming on Twitter. You can go check them out. I'm streaming mostly tactical shooters and horror games right now. Like, I'm trying to branch out and other stuff. I got things going on, but hopefully with this podcast now too with you, it'll help bring me out a little more.
Yeah, I think once people get to know you a little bit more, and just like as with me as well, the more people that know our personalities, it's going to be a little easier for us to come out of our shell and stuff like that. Now, if anyone does want to go check them out on Twitch, YouTube, I would highly recommend it. All those links and information you can find on our Facebook and Instagram page. So as soon as this episode is up, you can go and check there, and you should see a small bio with all that information. If Definitely check it out, especially the Twitch. I don't stream, but I catch myself watching streaming all the time. Like even on YouTube, I like watching speed runs sometimes, and I'll end up watching one or two, and then I'll look at the clock. It's been like 4 hours. I'm like, oh wow, like there goes my night.
It happens. The rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's like heroin. You know what I mean? Like you get a little bit. And then, in the game, I watched Castlevania Symphony of the Night, speedran the other night, and I thought it was it was going to be like a 20-minute video or whatever, but it ended up being like 2 hours and 2 minutes, and I watched the whole damn thing, front to back. So...
Well, just it's funny you mentioned Castlevania, because, they're still making games like that to this day. Like, there's a game called Slain, Back from Hell, it's called. And it's just like Castlevania. It's crazy. Like I actually covered it on my YouTube page a little bit.
I
didn't finish it
which
because it's insanely
Castlevania,
hard.
though?
But yeah.
Which one would you say?
like-
Like the originals or Symphony of
Yeah,
the
the
Night?
original. Yeah, like the NES ones, like Castlevania, Castlevania 2.
Yeah.
Like it's those side scroller style. Like it's even got like the like 8-bit, 16-bit type graphics. Like it's like a huge like they still make a lot of games like that.
Oh yeah, no,
And
they're my
it's
favorite.
insanely hard. It's got a heavy metal background like music to the back, but it's not like too repetitive.
Right.
But it's super gory. It's awesome. It's actually a lot of fun.
Have you
Highly
played
recommend that game.
have you played Super Meat Boy?
I know of it. I haven't played it. I've seen video of it.
So it's very addictive, and it's like that 8-bit, 16-bit style. It's a side scroller, and I feel like when the game systems came out that were worried about 3D texturing, like your PlayStation 1 and your N64. Now, granted, the video games we play today, owe a lot to those, so like I'm thankful they came along, but it seems like the 2D side scrollers kind of just like fell off, and they are literally some of my favorite games of all time. Obviously the Super Mario World for Super NES, Mega Man X, like the original Mega Man games are great, but like I love those games, and I'm
They
just
still
so
make
glad.
those Mega Man games. There's a ton of them now.
Oh yeah, I play them. I mean, they're just as hard as they were when I was a kid, you know. So it's funny, the video game culture. Not everyone who plays video games is into horror movies, but all of my friends who play games are also into horror movies. And it just seems like they fit together like peanut butter and jelly, especially horror
man.
video
Some pretty
games.
good games. Yeah, I mean, there's got some really good ones came out. Like they just, it's sort of a remake, but it's really like sort of a reboot. But the Resident Evil 2 that came out recently,
Is that the
everyone
Code
loves
Veronica
it.
one?
No. It's just like the original Resident Evil 2. It's like kind of like the similar story, but they just remastered it, remade it. It's got its own new story, but the same characters.
Okay.
Basically. Yeah, it's phenomenal. They got a new like kind of reboot of Resident Evil 3 coming out with Nemesis, like the old PS1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
they kind of reboot all those all over again, and they're phenomenal.
my favorite
really good.
is probably Resident Evil 4. And
Yeah,
it's going to sound weird.
everyone's.
Yeah, and well, look, the original 3, they were great. The 5 and 6, I know the problems they had, but I don't think they're as bad as people say they are. But 4
They're less
so
scary.
good.
They're just more action games.
Yes.
That's all they were. Like
Yeah,
they were
there's-
just kind of virus zombies instead of regular zombies. Even though there's always the virus, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
they went into crazy mutations, and then it was like
I think the Resident Evil people were trying to pay attention to other games that were coming out because, like, you had games like Left 4 Dead and you had this and that, and they wanted to focus more on fast-paced action, but like the Resident Evil games weren't like. And I think 4 was like the best comfortable medium between fast-paced and suspense and horror and even just gameplay mechanics. Like, I just think it's a solid game. So
no, I agree. Yeah, four definitely. It was groundbreaking in a way with those games because it released on the PS2, I believe, instead of the PlayStation 1. The graphics changed, the gameplay, the depth of the game. There was so much more you can do in the game. You had that creepy trader guy now.
Yep. I think
He was just funny.
I played it first on PlayStation 2, but I think my favorite version was the GameCube version, which I believe it was the last one released, and I think they said it's the most polished. I like the GameCube controller. Like, I had a GameCube growing up, and for some reason, that was probably like my favorite version of that game. I don't think there was any extra content or anything,
Yeah, I have a GameCube now, part of like my collection. I have a handful of games. They're mostly Star Wars games because the GameCube games, like Star Wars ones, are a little more rare and harder to come by.
Yeah.
So, and there's some of the better versions of them, but I never really played the Resident Evil games on the GameCube. I never, like I said, I didn't have one. I was more in the PlayStation, then into the Xbox, and now PC gaming mostly.
Right, yeah. And like, I would love to get into PC gaming, but I know exactly how expensive PC gaming is. Now, I'll say for, I don't know, maybe around like 2006 or so. No, maybe
Lost it there.
Yeah, I think maybe around 2006 or 7. I actually had a PC computer built. A buddy of mine builds computers, and we were all playing Battlefield 2. So I actually had a decent computer for a little bit, and I was trying to get into PC gaming, but then trying to keep up with the technology, it got too damn expensive.
Oh, it did. Yeah, I never had a good PC growing up, so like I always dabbled with PC gaming, but I never got really into it until like a couple of years ago, maybe like 4 years ago now.
So, what is your earliest memory of horror movies?
All right, so we kind of went through this. Like I made a list here, and yeah, like it's not a like in order list or anything. And I know we wanted to talk about just movies that really kind of affected us as like growing up and whatnot. It's not necessarily, or I can't give you my earliest because honestly, I don't remember the first horror movie I ever saw, which is kind of weird. But I just had one of those type of childhoods where I just kind of remember certain things. Some stuff was blocked
Yeah.
out. So
Oh yeah.
I don't know, but the first thing on my list, what I'd have to say, is Monster Squad from 1987, which, you know, that's kind of where I got my gamer tag from, which is why I also go by Wolfman, because my gamer tag is Wolfman Got Nards, and anyone's ever seen Monster Squad, that's arguably the biggest line of the movie is when they're trying to retrieve this amulet and from Dracula, and they're running away from him because in the movie Monster Squad, it's all the Universal monsters. So you have Dracula, the Wolfman, Creature from the
The
Black
Mummy.
Lagoon, the Mummy,
Yeah.
the Frankenstein monster, because he's not actually
It's
Frankenstein, he's really the monster.
no,
But
it's the monster.
yeah, yep,
It's unfortunate how many people have
yep.
never seen Monster Squad.
Yeah. So
It's
so
bullshit.
they're running from Dracula and they run into the Wolfman, and the one kid says to the other kid, he's like, kick him in the nards, and he's like, Wolfman don't got nards. They're like arguing. Then finally he does it, funny obviously. He's like, Wolfman got nards. So it's like kind of like a big thing. People know it. There's t-shirts and whatnot. So it just kind of stuck. And it's just that movie's just so fun in general. Like I know it's kind of cheesy and whatnot, but it's one of the earlier movies that I can remember me watching, and it was on all the time. And like growing up on the East Coast, like you had like the Saturday and Sunday movie, like on TV, like Channel 11, like WIP or WPIX or whatever it was, like always had those like classic horror. So Monster was one of those movies that was on all the time, and it just kind of stuck with me like, throughout, even now through an adult. It was just a fun movie.
Yeah, I think it's criminally underrated. People, but how should I say it? If people knew of the movie, I think it would be much bigger. Like a lot of people know about Gremlins and Beetlejuice, and like they're movies that came out years ago, and we were kids, but like people remember them, and to this day they love them. And if they would have just saw, because I didn't see Monster Squad until like 2004 or 5, and I still loved it. Like I loved the Universal monsters, the way they all acted. Like Frankenstein's monster was kind of like caring, you know what I mean? Like just like his actual character was, you know
he
what I
actually
mean?
got along with the kids. He was actually a good guy in the movie.
Yeah. And like there was that little girl, and she was like, "Come on, like what she say? Like
Phoebe.
Stop being pussies." Isn't that what she told
the
the guy?
Yep. She's like, stop being a pussy, because they all ran and hid when she brought him out, and then they were hiding over the fence and in the garbage cans, and obviously we'll review this movie at a future time. We don't want to get too much into it, but
I don't want to give the best parts away, but if you haven't seen it, I'm not saying stop listening right now and go see it because I don't want you to stop listening. But as soon as this is over, go see it for sure.
So what about you? What's the first movie on your little list here that affected you, or your first horror movie memory?
My first horror movie memory scared the shit out of me. And I think that's why I ended up loving horror movies as I got older, because it was something that had power over me for like a couple years. And then it didn't, and I enjoyed it. So I grew up, I had a My Buddy doll. And of course, my buddy had overalls, and my buddy had red hair. Well, around this time, there was a popular film franchise called Child's Play, where the main villain was a murderous, possessed, talking doll named Chucky, who just so happened to look exactly like my buddy.
Now,
so
hold on, before you go into that, I need to cut you off. Now, that murderous child doll was voiced by Brad Dourif, who has one of the creepiest goddamn voices in movies. Like, he is such a great actor, but his voice work in that series is phenomenal. So I'm sure that had to scar you also.
No. Brad Dourif is the man. He was in what Alien, right? Or Alien 2?
No, you're thinking of Lance Henriksen.
Wait, what? He was in a sci-fi movie, or maybe he was in he was in a sci-fi movie, and maybe it was the third one. And it's the one that had the guy who played Hellboy, Ron Perlman. Brad Dourif is in that movie.
Is he in Alien 3? I don't remember him. Yeah, he might be.
I think
he might be.
And
He was
when I heard his
the
voice,
police officer sheriff in the Rob Zombies remakes of Halloween.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And when I heard his voice on that movie, I said, "That's Chucky." And like I immediately wanted to go see everything that he was in at that point. You know what I mean? Because Chucky ended up being one of my favorites, but only because after TBS was the shit, dude. Monster Madness, or Joe Bob Briggs.
Joe Bob Briggs.
You know what?
Yep. Monster Vision.
Fucking Monster Vision. Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, that's something we're gonna have to review sometime too, because there's nothing like Monster Vision. Yeah, with YouTube, there's certain YouTube channels.
Well, they've
that
actually
do it.
sort of brought that back. It's on Amazon Prime, I believe.
Yeah, but I'm saying like on basic cable TV,
Yeah.
when he was doing it, he was the king. You
Oh,
know,
by far.
and
Yeah.
if you couldn't afford to rent horror movies or buy horror movies, or you were a kid and your parents weren't gonna let you, you'd stay up late on like a Saturday night and you put TBS on, and it was just such a dude. Those are some of my best memories as a kid.
Well, us growing
But
up,
I
we
don't-
had Joe Bob Briggs and we had Elvira that brought us like some of the
Val-
greatest, cheesiest horror movies ever.
Yeah, Elvira, I remember. I actually have a poster of her on my wall right now. It's funny you mentioned her because a lot of people don't know of Elvira. Well, a lot of people don't know of Joe Bob Briggs either. But yeah, like if you were our age growing up, like those were the people that were introducing us to some of our favorite horror movies. So Monster Vision was on, Child's Play came on. I walked in on it. I screamed. And I grabbed my buddy doll, and I threw it down the stairs of the basement. Didn't go down there for 6 months. Went down there 6 months later. The doll's not there. Now, my mom actually threw the doll out. She was like, "Oh, he's never going to play with this thing again." But my wonderful sister had told me that he got up and, he ran off. He's somewhere in the house, but he's not here. So then, like, another year went by before I went in the basement again. And I was just like... It was this weird feeling because I was a young kid. I was like maybe 3, 4, and I remember all this very vividly. But then at that point, I actually started watching the Friday the 13th movies, and they didn't like frighten the shit out of me. Like I would jump when scary things would happen, but as I got more comfortable with horror movies, and then I saw my first Child's Play movie, I was hooked. After I conquered my fear of that little bastard doll, I felt like I could watch any horror movie, and it was like almost like a early adrenaline thing, like, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Now that we're talking, it actually reminded me of like two. Well, there's three things that have scared me now that I think about it. One of them is actually on this list. It's actually last. We'll get to that last, but
Yeah. Yeah.
two of them that, like, one we actually talked about a little bit earlier is going back to your stairs, is the part in part 4 of Friday the 13th where Jason busts through the stairs and grabs her legs as he's going up. So I had these basement stairs, and we had this really big, creepy, unfinished basement in the house that I grew up in. So I was terrified of those goddamn basement stairs. I hated them. I would always have to turn the light on, take a flashlight with me, and if someone turned the light off, because the switch was all the way at the top of the stairs, there was no switch down at the bottom.
You'd
Like, either
sprint
you'd
up.
be leaving the lights on downstairs because we had the little lights in different like areas where you just pull the little cord. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like, they would stay
Oh,
on.
yeah.
You run upstairs and on all night. Then your parents are yelling at you because you're leaving the lights on down there. But there's
Yeah.
that, and then for some reason I remembered watching Halloween, and I want to say it was the first one, and it's one of the scenes where Jamie Lee Curtis is staring at the house. And she's just looking at it, and then Michael's face like kind of just flashes through the window, and for some reason I was really, really young when I saw that and scared the living daylights out of me. So
Yeah,
those are two
that
things
was
that I
like
remember.
that was the essential boogeyman, like Michael
Yeah.
Myers in Halloween, and that was done right. And I honestly don't think Halloween did it right ever since. Even the newest one with Jamie Lee Curtis back in it, and they retconned everything. Like they said it was like a direct sequel to the first movie. And they're actually doing doing a sequel to the last
Yeah,
Halloween movie that just
that
came
actually
out.
was pretty good. I really did enjoy that movie.
Right, and that's
Yeah,
what
I
I was
thought they
about.
did it
Like
right.
the,
Yeah.
that was the first time that I feel like the Halloween movies got it right since the original, with the suspense and the slow pacing, and it was good. I'm glad it got remade, or whatever, sequel, whatever you want to call it. But
Yeah.
I'm glad they did it well.
Well, there's definitely going to be probably like a 7-part series, maybe not literally 7-part series, but we're definitely going to be going into those movies eventually, and there's a lot of them, good and
Oh
bad.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think part 6 is when they had the cult come in, and it had a young Paul Rudd in it.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
you had like
Curse of
your
Michael
H2O.
Myers, part 6.
Yeah, part 6. It's probably like my least favorite, even though I like Paul Rudd and I like his character. And then after that, you had like Busta Rhymes breaking out karate.
Halloween Resurrection. Yep. A lot of horror movies at that time went into the ghetto hood. Like, it was kind of funny how they did that. You
It's
know, like
weird.
They had what was
Leprechaun.
that? No, well, yeah, they had Leprechaun in the Hood, Leprechaun in the Hood 2, but there was that Snoop Dogg horror movie. Was it Bones? God, I should have looked this up before. So that came out roughly around the same time. There was was it Tales in the Hood that had
Yo.
I should have looked up these names, because now I look like an idiot trying to figure this out.
No,
but I didn't even know
that.
I didn't know this was going this direction, so I don't have all this stuff on top of my head. But yeah, there was a lot of movies that went in that direction then.
Not Charlie Murphy, Eddie Murphy. Didn't he do a vampire movie, like Vampire in Brooklyn
Eddie
or some
Murphy?
shit?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like for a while, horror movies kind of moved out of like the forests and out of like the camps and out south, and they went to the ghetto for a little bit.
But that's what was cool about horror, though. It like, horror was like anyone, like, especially in certain anyone could love horror, and then it had anyone in them. There was no racism, there was no discrimination.
No,
like, anyone could be in a horror movie.
Well, the stereotype that the black guy always dies first.
Well,
that came out for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was like 100% purposely done that way. It just sometimes just the way it was written. You know what I mean? But I know what you mean.
Think it was done with. I don't think it was done with racist overtones. At all. I just think how they wrote black characters in the 80s and early 90s, just like how they wrote gay characters in the 90s. You know, they were always this stereotypical, you know, hello, like that kind of gay.
Well, they were disposable characters in a way.
Right.
But there was a lot of disposable characters of any race in general, because you usually had your final guy, your final girl, and then everyone else pretty much.
You got the slut, you got the stoner, you got the nerd. Yeah, I mean, go see Cabin Fever if you don't know what we're talking about.
But this is a good segue into my number 2, though. Like, actually talking about black people in movies, because my number 2 is just zombies in general. So like, zombies were huge for me, like, growing up, because when I skated roller derby, I wasn't Wolfman, I was Zombicidal Maniac. So like, everyone called me Zombie. So
good name.
Zombies were big on me. So like, Night of the Living Dead series and the Return of the Living Dead series were huge. And then the first Night of the Living Dead was made in 1968 and actually featured one of the first leading men. I might have actually been the first leading black man, like, to be in a movie.
I think it was.
Yeah. And he was, God, I don't know his name, like I said, off the top of my head, but I should have researched that, because this is on my list. But he was very, very good, and it caused a lot of issues with people, and that's why horror movies were also looked down on for a long time, too. That was one of the reasons.
Well, and the other thing I feel is horror movies have always been easily attackable, if that makes sense. It's just so easy to take crap shots. Like, if you remember in the 80s when you had like Tipper Gore and like the Mothers Against Metal and Mothers Against Horror Movie, and
the
you know,
parental
all these
advisory
groups,
board people,
yeah, they're easy pickings. And, you know, honestly, film critics didn't help. You know, Siskel and Ebert, you know, any kind of horror movie that was coming out, they pretty much shit on. I remember specifically they did a review of Friday the 13th 4. The, what was the tagline of that? The final chapter?
Final chapter, yep.
Yeah, and basically Siskel says like, oh, well, this movie is nothing but stabbing and poking teenagers and it basically has the message that life isn't worth living because you're just gonna die. So, and it's like,
Well, basically, they were like
nobody,
blood, sex, drugs, and rock and roll is bad.
yeah, but like nobody went into that movie and came out like, oh well, life's not worth living because of this is gonna happen. Like, it's a movie. Like, come on.
No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, Siskel and Ebert, they're shitheads. We'll just be plain and honest. Like, they're not
Yeah.
very well liked in the horror community in a way. They weren't good.
No, they are respected in the film community.
Yeah.
And I understand a lot that they have done for the film community, but just, you know, being a horror fan, I have my gripes with them.
Yeah, well, I mean,
So-
we're not watching horror movies to be Oscar award-winning movies. You know
No.
what I mean? Like, they're on a different level, so they always looked at them at a different light. You know what I mean? So they just picked apart every little thing, and it just wasn't their thing in general. You know, I don't think they would have liked, even if it was perfectly put together. You know what I mean? I still don't think they would like them.
Right. Now,
It's just not
I
their
just
thing.
pulled it up quick. The Dwayne Jones was the black actor from Night of the Living Dead 1968 version.
Yep.
And his character was Ben.
Yep.
I don't think I remembered hearing his name in that movie.
It
so
might
weird.
have been used like once or twice. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, like a throwaway scene or something like
Yeah.
that.
Like, you know,
That's
I think
so
you
weird.
get like an introduction to him, and that's about it. You know, I don't think a lot of people really reference by their name too much. I mean, obviously everyone knows Barbara because of the whole opening
Yeah.
scene. They're coming for you, Barbara. You know, but
Yeah. And honestly, did you see the 90s remake? I think, was it Tom Savini
yeah,
who did
Tom
it?
Savini. Yeah, they had him direct it. George Romero wanted him to do that. He actually asked him
Yeah.
to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Barbara
It was
in
good.
that movie
I liked
is
it.
much. Yeah, she's way better in the remake than the original. The
Well,
original, she's
yeah.
kind of just a fucking ice sculpture.
Well, in the remake, they kind of modeled the movie around her. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you can add her to the strong female leads that, you know, people think just started coming up now, even though they go back, especially on horror movies and big horror movies, you know, well
Yeah.
into
Oh,
the
yeah.
70s and even earlier, you know?
So, I know for a fact you didn't mention a couple other movies after the zombie movies.
Like what?
Well, some people will call them zombie, but I don't. They actually have a specific name. There's 3 of them. The third movie is nothing like the other 2.
Oh, you want the Evil
Evil
Dead,
Dead.
series? Yeah, well, that's later.
Yeah.
That's number 4. I wasn't going to get into those movies.
I just when it comes to zombie, I just wanted
Yeah.
to point it out that like those are not zombies.
Yeah, I don't consider them zombies either. They're kind of like possessed demons. That's how I see them.
Yeah.
As. I don't see them as zombies at all.
I just saw this list pop up because I was
Yeah.
searching Night of the Living Dead, and Evil Dead popped up, and I'm like, no fucking
Well,
way.
that's why I
I'm
was so
sorry.
hesitant there. I didn't know what you were talking about because honestly, I never really heard too many people call them zombies before. So that's why I was a little weird. I was like, I don't. Is that what he's getting at? I'm like,
Fans
Yeah.
fans of the movie do not call them zombies, but
Yeah,
this
no.
article, that's so weird. It was like top 10 influential zombie movies, and it was on there, and I don't get that.
top
like,
10 influential zombie movies. Ugh, I own like over 100 zombie movies alone, and definitely Evil Dead is not in the top 10 influential zombie movie category. At
No,
all.
but I wouldn't even put it in the zombie movie.
Yeah, well, that's what I
category.
mean.
Like,
Yeah, it doesn't even cross my mind as a zombie movie at all. Yeah, no. It's definitely in the
But-
top 10 possessed person, like, demon movies, though. Like, I do
I would
that.
put it in. I would put it in the top 10 horror movies of all time because I think it's
I
great.
mean, yeah, that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, I would probably put it in the top 10 also. I'd have to put some serious thought in that, but yeah. It definitely
Look,
probably in there.
if I made a top 10 horror movie list, I couldn't do it in order, and they would always change, but the same 10 would usually be
Agreed,
up there.
agreed.
But that's
Yeah,
a
no,
different,
I agree
that
with
is
you
a
on that.
different episode because
Yeah,
I
that's a
know
whole
that's
nother
going to
thing.
cause a lot.
Yeah.
It's going to cause
Yeah.
a lot of debate.
No,
'Cause
I
we're
agree.
gonna
I
leave some
couldn't
off.
put them in order from 1 to 10 either. It would just be like kind of like this list. There's 5 movies. Well, a couple of them, 2 of them are series that I'm getting into on my list. But yeah, Like I
But
wouldn't. Yeah, I couldn't
and
put them
just
in order.
because
It'd just be 10.
right, yeah, and just because like a movie's really good doesn't necessarily mean it was influential to us. You know what I mean?
Correct, which is why I left Friday the 13th off my list, even though it's my
Right,
favorite
even though
slasher and Jason's one of my favorite characters of all time. I just is not on this top 5 that influenced like my life growing up or whatnot.
I know it sounds weird because I am a fan of like horror B movies and exploitation movies, and if people don't know what a Grindhouse was, it was a double feature that had like B movies, horror movies, exploitation, and 42nd Street was the world famous street in New York where all of the counterculture was happening. Yeah, there was drugs and there was prostitution and there was porno theaters, but there was
Don't forget
also
martial arts movies.
I was gonna say that you had your import Japanese movies, your your voiceover martial art movies. You had your basic horror movies and your B movies. Just like this huge counterculture subgenre that was right off Times Square, and basically it was like where all the cool kids hung out. I mean, our definition of cool kids. But when we're
and not so cool kids and murderers and
yeah,
junkies and
but they're
the riffraff of
everywhere.
the city.
They're
But we're talking like the 70s and 80s of New York, like
basically,
maybe even 60s. Just the
oh yeah,
it was
no,
just
it
the
started in
shithole
the
of the city.
60s.
It's not like it is now.
Oh yeah, no. Basically, if Ron Jeremy's mustache like jumped off his face and formed a person, he would live on 42nd Street. You're like, that's how fucking slimy this place was. And I just wish it was like that, like in my adulthood. Just even if they started cleaning it up tomorrow, if I could have just spent like a week there, picked up some kind of habit and got clean when I got home, just just enjoyed it. So, but when I'm talking about influential movies, I didn't get into any of those movies until I was older because I grew up on like the classics. So my third movie for like that influenced me into wanting, actually this movie in particular didn't just influence me into horror movies. It was the first movie I remember that I thought I can make movies. And it was the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, if you don't know a lot about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it came out in 1974, and the director was Tobe Hooper. Now, Tobe Hooper would go on to do a lot more. But yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you're listening to this, you've probably seen the movie. Okay.
Did Tobe Hooper do Carnival of Souls? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Hold on, because
I know he didn't do too many movies after, but I feel like that was one of them, and it's considered like I've seen it, when I was younger. I haven't watched it sometime recently.
Let me see. Carnival. No, because I know he actually did a lot of executive producer stuff as well.
Well,
no,
I just meant like directorial type stuff.
The Funhouse.
Oh, the Funhouse. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, I know there was something.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah, the Funhouse. That's what it was.
But seeing that movie, because everyone's like, oh my God, it's like the most realistic. And for a long time, everyone's like, oh, it's the most gory movie and blah, blah, blah. Like, there's not a lot of gore in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's all
that was done in, what, 74, right?
Yeah, came out in 74.
Yeah,
and
so that was one of the first movies
budget
of its time. Like,
yep.
By far.
He beat out Halloween. Okay, so Night of the Living Dead came out first as that kind of horror movie.
Yeah.
But Texas Chainsaw Massacre beat out Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. Like, he was basically your first slasher, even if
Evil
you
Dead, all those. Like, he, before gore was a thing, he was, because Night of the Living Dead didn't really have too much gore in it. It had a little bit, but not like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right. Now, Dawn of the Dead had a little bit more gore in it.
Yeah, but that was later.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It came out later where they knew the boundaries they can push. But that movie was all done with how it was filmed and sound effects. So when Leatherface hits that chainsaw against that metal door and you hear that, or the guttural scream, that was not even camera tricks, that was audio. And I saw that with a friend of mine who was trying to be a filmmaker, or that's what he wanted to be when he grew up. We were like, I think 10. And he was like, yeah, I want to make movies. And he had a little VCR camcorder, and we would do these little shorts and stuff. And we watched that movie, and I remember being like, dude, how is this not like recognized as the greatest movie of all time? But then again, when I was 12, I also thought Scarface was the greatest movie of all time. So, it's different when you're young,
Are you sure you don't have the inner rapper inside you?
Well, dude, that's the thing. You know what? We're going to have... Listen, I thought of this today, and we're going to have an episode on movies that are actually pretty good, but they were ruined by douchebags. Scarface is one of those movies, because so many douchebags like that movie, everyone now thinks it's a garbage movie, and it's pretty good.
It was a good movie. It was a really good movie, and it had a very young Michelle Pfeiffer in it who looked amazing.
Yeah, oh my God, she was... Well, I mean,
she was beautiful
think about
then.
it. Yeah,
I mean, she still is. She still,
yeah.
you see her, and she looks like she's defying age and probably has lots of makeup.
But for when that movie came out, I bet most of that cocaine in that movie was real. Because that's what Hollywood was back then.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are going to have that up. We are going to have this episode of movies that get a bad rap because of the people who tend to like it. Now, a movie that you won't find on there is like the Medea movies, because they are shit.
Anything made by Tyler Perry is garbage, basically.
Yeah, no, I'm not, and I think he's actually not a bad actor. I've seen him in other things, but his movies in general, they're just garbage.
So we're not covering Boo and Boo 2 as horror movies, right?
Well, when we have to do our Halloween shit list,
the worst horror movies ever made.
Yeah, like the shitty Halloween movies that only come out because Halloween's coming out. Yeah, you're gonna see Boo and Boo 2, and I bet you there's gonna be a third one this year. I don't even know if that's a fact, but I bet you there will be.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
So, yeah, I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but we're not talking about my all-time favorites or your all-time. We're talking about influential movies, and Child's Play, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw, those were the 3 horror movies that pretty much formed me into what I like even to this day.
So now I'm going to get into my third one here, and as you can tell with some of my picks, I kind of like the goofier side of horror sometimes. I have a little soft spot for that, especially when I was a kid. A lot of those late 80s, or I shouldn't say late 80s, just 80s horror movies, and sometimes into the 90s, like they had like a goofy side to some of them, even though they were gory. I mean, you had like Frankenhooker, and then you get into like trauma films, even though some of them aren't really horror. You got like Basket Case, all these type of movies. So, my next pick is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That was another classic to me that was always shown on like those, the morning, afternoon, like matinee shows and stuff. I think, that might have been on, Monster Vision with Joe Bob Briggs.
Yeah.
It's just one of those movies that's just really fun to watch. And honestly, though, if you're scared of clowns, they probably scare the crap out of you. But there's big monsters, clowns. You have to, it's not a spoiler alert, but you got to pop your nose to kill them. They're really aliens. They come from another planet to come down and to feed on people, and they put people in these cotton candy cocoons. Like, it's on my bucket list. If I ever get money one day, I am getting this like crazy ass killer clown sleeve. I'm gonna have cotton candy cocoons. They had these little inflatable balloon dogs that they chase people with. They had this popcorn gun where they shot the popcorn to get on you, and you get home and they grew these little I don't know, they're like Venus flytrap type monsters, but they were clown faces coming out of the hamper. Like, getting all this tattooed. It's on the thing. I need to have it before I die. Like, it's just one of those movies that sits in me. It was just so much fun. And actually, one of the things I did notice in that movie, which was pretty cool, because it was a lower budget movie, but B movies then compared to like B movies now are a little different. But it was one of the first movies I noticed where they used a lot of paintings as backgrounds, and they put the people over them. And the paintings were so well done. Obviously now with like 4K and stuff, you can really tell more. But back then, on TV and VHS, and even a little bit on DVD, you didn't notice it as much. I mean, these
Yeah,
like
well,
paintings were phenomenal. Whoever the
even
artist was,
today
shout out
though,
to them.
even today, a lot of movies
Yeah.
still use miniatures,
Yeah.
and it's crazy. I mean, we might get some filmmakers listening to this, and they're gonna understand exactly. But like a lot of the big Hollywood movies from back in the day, 50s and all that, like the Golden Age or whatever, you had a lot of painted backgrounds. But if it was done bad, you could tell it was done bad. Alfred Hitchcock used a lot of painted backgrounds, and I want you to go watch some of
I
his
actually
movies
never knew
and
that.
Yeah, exactly. Go
Yeah,
and
never knew that.
find, because he did it well, and that's the thing. And Killer Clowns did it very well.
Yeah, they did well.
They
I mean,
knew-
you can tell nowadays, but back then you couldn't tell as much.
Well, they didn't know the advent of 4K was gone. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I remember watching Killer Clowns with a girl that I was dating, and she was the kind of girl who, like, 10 minutes into that movie, she must have said it 100 times, like, "This is stupid." Like, "What? This is stupid." What? I'm like, "You don't get it." Like, like, it's not stupid. You're stupid because you don't understand it. Okay? It's supposed to be stupid, and that's what makes it awesome.
One of the best parts of that movie is the police chief or whatever he was, captain, that was on duty, and he keeps thinking he's getting all these prank calls from the people. So they're calling up, and these clowns are pretty much abducting this whole town, and it's this guy and this girl who were up at the little makeout alley, like, because a lot of those movies had those back then. They see what they think is a shooting star, and they go to find it, and they find the circus tent, which ends up being their spaceship that crashed.
Yep.
So it's basically them and then the girl's ex-boyfriend, who is now a cop, and they're riding around the city, like, trying to find these clowns, and then they run into the two bumbling idiot friends of his. Not that I'm trying to get too crazy with this, but my point is, the other cop at the station, one of the favorite things about that is he gets all these calls, and the guy's talking to him, and he's like, "Oh, no, this is real." And he's like, "Oh, you assholes are trying to drive me off the force." And he's like, whatever. And he's like, "Fuck you," over, and he hangs up on him. But he was like a big kind of actor then, and just hearing him say that, it's not something he would say in his other movies. And just the way it was, like, it was just a running joke between some of my friends and I. So like, we'd hang up or whatever, and we'd be like, "Fuck you," over. A lot of people had no idea where that was from, but that's from Killer Clowns. I don't even think some of them did.
There's a lot of these cult movies that have these quotable lines, and it's. Have you seen Meet the Feebles?
Once when it came out, I don't remember the movie at all. Like, there's a lot of movies I've seen once and just don't remember them.
It was Peter Jackson's first movie, and it was done with like puppets, like Muppets, like people in costumes, and it was just, it's awesome. I'm gonna tell you to watch it because it's like the sign even said, like, it's like Muppets on LSD, because they do a variety show, but like one's a heroin addict and one's like a prostitute, and like it's just, there's like drug deals. It's like super violent, but it's Muppets. It's like,
I just remember I've seen it because he did Bad Taste, like, and that's
yes.
Yeah, I watched all those movies because people are like, "Oh, the Lord of the Rings guy made these like crappy movies when he was younger," because and then
but he also did
discovered
like
Bad Taste and Dead Alive. Yeah,
but
I mean, they weren't crappy. Is not my point.
No, but
them.
that movie, like, a lot of people didn't know, but like my inner circle of friends growing up, my real name is the name of one of the characters in that movie, and he had a speech impediment and he couldn't pronounce it. So like all my friends would call me my name with that speech impediment, and we all knew it was from, but nobody else got it. But that's like the memories that we draw. It's how movies, I guess, help form us. But Killer Clowns, if you're not into B horror movies, cheese.
It is very cheesy. It has an extreme cheese level, but there's just a nostalgia factor, and the clowns are actually done really well. You know? And just one little more tidbit about that is actually, if you watch Ernest Scared Stupid, the people that made that movie, they repurposed a lot of those clown masks for the trolls in Ernest Scared Stupid.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. The main bad guy in Ernest Scared Stupid actually is based off of one of those old costumes.
Well, all of them were, like, actually
every
one
of them was used.
Yeah.
Oh no shit.
They're all repurposed, like with slight changes and a lot of like just the coloring, turning them all gray and taking the color out of them. Like they're all of them. And
Well,
even
you
some
can-
of the ones that didn't make it in the movie that they just had laying around, like got repurposed into that movie.
Right, you can tell with the main guy, he's
Yeah.
the mask of the old, like the big fat clown. You can
Yep.
tell by how that mask sits, and it's cool. It's cool that movie studios are able to do that and share stuff like that. So
Yes.
that was
So I
your
mentioned Monster Squad, Killer Clowns, and Evil Dead as being like goofy movies and whatnot. We brought up the zombies, and then you had
Yeah.
Child's Play, Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Yep.
and Friday the 13th. So on to the next one.
So I want to. Obviously, the show's about horror movies, but if we're talking about movies that influenced us, I'm trying to debate on which one I should say first. And I think I'm going to say my non-horror movie because I want to end it on a horror movie.
Yeah. We'll end it on my last one as a horror movie, and we'll get into yours. Yeah, definitely.
So Tombstone. Go ahead and get your laughs out now.
It's not really much
Tombstone-
last. It's a great damn movie.
It is, and it was the first movie that I remember sitting down, watching front to back, and wanting to go and find more movies. That movie, for some reason, it did something. It gave me some kind of feeling. It's not like I wanted to rewind it and watch it again. It was, I want to go to the movie store, and I just found this random movie, and there's so many more movies, and they could all be good, and that's what really got me into actually watching. Like no more Disney, like Aladdin and Lion King. I actually wanted to watch films, so it was a big influence. Love that movie.
Oh, dude, I mean, you really had an all-star cast. Doc Holliday, played by Val Kilmer, is one of his
Yep.
best roles. I mean, I don't think it's underrated, but it might be at the same time. Like him playing that, he was just phenomenal.
Yeah, it's the
Kurt
best
Russell.
depiction. It's the best depiction
Yeah.
of Doc Holliday because there's been many Doc Hollidays in movies, and I think Val Kilmer's. He might not have been the best Batman, but he was the best damn Doc Holliday.
Sorry.
Okay. I'm just.
I know.
In my opinion, Michael Keaton is the top Batman. All right.
Oh my god, I'm so glad you said that. We're gonna get hate because I agree with you. I think
No,
I
Christian Bale
agree.
can go suck a loaf, dude.
I liked him, but Michael Keaton was definitely the best Batman by far. And it was
think
kind of funny
Christian
because
Bale-
he got hated for that
He
too
did.
when it came out because
He
he did do
did.
movies like that.
And like Christian Bale, I think is a better Bruce Wayne, but as Batman,
Agreed, definitely
Yeah.
agreed.
Yeah, and fucking Ben Affleck, get out of here.
I didn't mind Ben Affleck, but this is a whole nother thing. But let's go back to
Yeah,
Tombstone
yeah.
real quick.
But
So the cast for your movie was Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp, Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday, Sam Elliott, who is phenomenal in everything, was
Everything.
Virgil Earp.
And
Bill
he looks just like my
Paxton.
dad. If you,
I think Bill
I'm not-
Paxton was in it. He was Morgan Earp. Like, I mean,
think-
Michael Bean, like he was
Yeah.
in it. He was Johnny Ringo. I mean, Charlton Heston was in it. He was Henry Hooker.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I can go down. I mean, a lot of these names I know some, you know what I mean, but I can't place them. But those are like really like the big name.
I think
big name
that was
guys in
actually
there.
one of Bill Paxton's early movies because he blew up after that.
Yeah.
For a while in the 90s, he was everywhere. Because I think it was before Twister, because he was in Twister, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
that movie
he
was
technically didn't die by Jason, but he was the only person to be in a Friday the 13th movie, an Alien movie, and a Terminator movie.
Yeah. Yep, that's true. Shit, I didn't even think about that. I will send you a picture of my dad though, because he looked identical to Sam Elliott. Like everyone always said, who you look like? He's like, yeah, I know, but I'm like a 5'6" Italian off the boat. I'm not Sam Elliott, They don't even sound the
Sam
same.
Elliott's the man.
He's great. I'm not even a fan of Dodge, but when I hear one of his commercials, like I hear his voice, he's like, you know what makes you a man?
Yeah.
Buying a Dodge truck. I'm like, you know what? I need a Dodge truck. Fuck. God damn it,
I
Sam.
want to buy a Dodge truck.
Yeah. He could sell women's panties, and I'd be like, you know what? I think I need some women's panties. Dude, did you see the last Terminator movie, though?
No, not yet.
Schwarzenegger needs to hang it up, man.
All right, yeah, that's what I figured.
But they'll probably just put The Rock in there because he's in everything nowadays. I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. When I heard they killed John Connor off in like the first like couple minutes, like I just kind of canceled out of that Terminator. I don't know actually if I'm still gonna see it or not. Just kind of ruined it for me, even though they brought Sarah Connor back. So
Yeah, but no, you need John, and you need Edward Furlong as John.
exactly.
I mean, dude, I'm sure he's available. Let's be
Yeah.
real.
I feel like he was an underrated actor, and because of his drug issues and whatnot, he should have been bigger than he was.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
He was
I
good.
heard he was a little hard to work with once he started blowing up.
I'm
'Cause
sure he
did-
was. He was on top
you
of the
know,
world. He had Pet Cemetery. I mean, like he had so many movies. T2. Like,
Yeah, he was the Crow, and I love the Crow. But
I
he
never
was in
saw
one
it.
of the.
I didn't want to.
You never saw the Crow?
No.
Oh,
Edward
his
Furlong's
version.
Yeah.
No, you're not missing anything. Don't worry. Don't waste your
Yeah.
time.
No.
But they
Yeah.
said that's like when he was like the hardest to work with was like that time period, and I'm just thinking to myself like, dude, like you're doing a shit sequel to a cult movie. It's not even gonna be released. Like, how big of a Hollywood star do you think you are? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I mean, shit. They made 4 of them eventually. I mean, I didn't even see the second one. I just didn't want to.
You know, the Deftones was the house band in one of those movies.
I heard something about that. I guess they were on the soundtrack and everything too, but I didn't know.
There's a
I wouldn't
scene.
know.
I think in the second movie, there's a scene where there's like a concert going on, and there's people.
Okay.
Well, they're the band, you know what I mean? And that was right
Yeah.
before I think Adrenaline came out or whatever. I'm a huge Deftones fan, love them.
Well, Adrenaline Around the Fur, 2 of the greatest albums ever, and then I didn't like the Deftones really too much after that. They kind of
So
changed
you-
their whole style. Yeah.
So
yeah.
you didn't like White Pony?
No, not really. I bought that thinking it was going to be amazing, and I was very disappointed by that. It had a couple of okay songs. Yeah, that's just a whole nother topic for me to talk about off air.
we will have to cover that eventually because I think they are incredible. And I see it like this: as bands get older, they're not into this. We don't listen to the exact music we listened to 10 years ago. And bands are like that too. So their sound evolves and they change. I used to be a huge Incubus fan.
No,
not
I
so
get
much
it.
anymore though.
Yeah, but
know?
that first Incubus album, Science, was pretty fucking cool though. It
Oh,
was really
yeah.
good. It was totally different than their other music.
I love Science. I really do.
Heavy, had a little industrial edge to it. Like it was metal, like
Yep.
arguably
even-
new metal-ish.
Even
I
like
guess.
Anti-Gravity Love Song, Summer Romance, like that funky kind of jazz song. Like I was
Yeah.
digging it. And I liked them for Make Yourself because I thought Pardon Me is a good song, and Stellar and stuff. But
I
as they
love
got
me some
older-
funk in my metal. I'm gonna bring up Infectious Grooves. Now we're getting off on a side tangent.
Yeah, no, another episode. We got to write down these episode ideas. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Like I need a whiteboard in here and just be like episode 48 funk metal. All right, so I mentioned Tombstone.
Yep.
So
Not
what
to
do
your
you
next
got?
one. You're not. No, we'll go to your non one. We'll end on a horror movie.
Right. So wait. I said I don't think it's a horror movie, but you think it could be, and I see where you're coming from. I think if it was directed differently, it would have been more of a horror movie. But American Psycho was the
Correct.
movie that I remember the first time I saw that, and that was the first movie I actually didn't have to rewind because it was on DVD, but I played it over again. Like a lot of people said they did that with Fight Club. Like Fight Club's a damn good movie, but I didn't go and watch it immediately after I finished it. With American Psycho, I did. And Christian Bale, I know I was just ragging on him for being a shit Batman, but that movie is awesome.
So I have this. The reason why I think it's not necessarily like a straight up horror movie. It's in the horror universe. He's like a kind of a serial killer. Like the way
Yep.
he develops, he's definitely off his rocker. The dude's missing a couple screws. Actually, he's probably missing most of the screws. He's probably only got like 2 left out of God knows how many are in there.
Yeah.
And he just goes on this like crazy rampage of killing throughout the movie, and the way they filmed it, and the blood, and the whole idea of him, and then a lot of it's in like the way they leave the ending. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like to me, it put it in the horror universe. It was very thriller like,
and that's the thing, because
suspenseful in a way.
I'm not going to ruin the movie for anybody, but at the end, when you actually figure out the main thing of the movie, because the whole thing is he is a Wall Street playboy and they're all about doing coke and hiring high class escorts
And outdoing each other. You
Yeah,
gotta one
and
up
that
the other
it's
person. It's all about ego and
excess and ego.
comparing dicks, basically, almost literally.
Yeah. So when you see the end of the movie and like the last couple scenes, the movie changes. I'm not going to ruin it for anyone because I want you to go out and see it if you haven't. But if you have seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think that made me want to watch the movie again because I felt like I missed something the first time. Like, I'm like, holy shit. Now I got to rewatch and I got to see, did I miss something? Was this, you know what I mean? And I've seen that movie 10 times, and every time, you know, like the Huey Lewis scene, I get a chuckle out of. You know what I mean?
You just make me laugh at just thinking about it right now. Like,
yeah, or like the business card scene. He's like, "Show me Mark Allen's card."
for fuck's sake, they all almost look exactly alike. That scene
Yeah.
drove me absolutely crazy. Like,
Well,
you have to be super OCD to the point where you're almost like be put into an institute to notice the difference on those cards.
eggshell white,
Yeah.
raised lettering, embossed, and it has a watermark. That motherfucker.
You know what? maybe off camera they might have looked a little different because not everything always translates to your
to
TV
film. Yeah,
when
yeah.
filmed. So there might have been a little more of a difference in person, but like on camera, it was like you couldn't tell about the raised lettering. You
But I
barely
think
saw
that's
the
part of
watermark.
the joke, though. I think that's part of the
I
joke.
know it is. Yeah, but
you
at the
know,
same
like-
time, I think it probably was different.
It could have been absolutely. I mean, yeah. If we held them side
Yeah.
by side, we'd be like, oh yeah, they're different. But like, what makes that so epic? It's like, dude, it's fucking business cards. Like, what are you breaking a sweat for? You know what I mean? But
But then that's their
see
life.
it. Yeah, exactly. Just ego and excess. Go see it if you haven't seen it. Oh dear God. Like, that's the one movie I'd recommend to anybody. And I feel safe because it's, like I said, it's not quite a horror movie, but it could be because it's suspense and thriller. But like, if you're into movies and you haven't seen American Psycho, go see it.
All right, so since we brought up a couple of movies that aren't really horror movies, I'll just throw a couple in here real quick as honorable mentions before we get into our final horror movie to end the podcast. So, two movies that really kind of affected my childhood. We kind of touched it on a second, but on one of them, but it's The Toxic Avenger by Troma and Predator. So, as you can tell, I like my monsters. So, The Toxic Avenger, for being such a low-budget B movie in a way, had one of the greatest, like, monster / superheroes, if you want to call them that, like, ever. And then obviously the Predator is just super badass. I mean, who doesn't like the Predator? You know what I mean? Like, he's one of the greatest monsters ever made. I mean, I have Jason, the Predator, and the Alien as, like, you know, my probably my holy trinity of, like, bad guys. You know what I mean?
Would you say that Toxic Avenger was an anti-hero? Because he is
Yeah,
the main
yeah.
aspect of the movie. He was bullied, you know what I mean? So, like, you felt yourself rooting for him. But there wasn't, and still really isn't, a lot of monster movies where the monster's usually the good guy.
Yeah, no, he's definitely, stuttering words here, but yeah, he's definitely the anti-hero. He definitely fits the bill in that, by far. I mean, you root for him the whole movie because, you know, he's this little skinny, twerpy guy in the beginning. He gets
Melvin.
bullied by the jockey, crazy fucking psychopaths of Tromaville and thrown out a gym. Like, he's basically this, he cleans up. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I really suggest you go out and see it, but we'll just give like a tiny synopsis. I mean, we're not going to show you the whole movie, but the creation of him is he's the janitor at a sports club type, you know, gym, pool, like the whole nine, you know, in there, and he gets treated like crap in that place. And he's being bullied. They pull a prank on him with these girls, and he gets bullied by their boyfriends, and he basically gets thrown out a window, and there just happens to be this truck of toxic ooze right outside the window of the gym.
Uncovered,
yeah, uncovered, open, bubbling. I mean, you know, welcome to Tromaville, New Jersey.
Yeah.
So that was another thing. I mean, I grew up in Jersey. I don't live there anymore, but So like some of these movies were just like extra home because you don't realize it, but a lot of stuff is either filmed or takes place in Jersey, and it's kind of hilarious. Like how many horror
Jane Silent
movies or
Bob?
action movies, like anything takes place in Jersey. It's funny.
Yeah, Clerks, Jane Silent Bob, Mallrats.
Yep.
That was all out of Jersey.
Well, I mean, funny story, Damien. If you ever hear this, growing up, Damien Smith was my best friend, and he's actually related to Kevin Smith. So I've actually met him before.
Oh, no shit.
And his family is in. He wasn't. I'm not going to get into details, but a lot of his family members were like little roles in those movies and stuff. I mean, it was years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin wouldn't remember it to this day, but his family was huge to me growing up. They were like my second home. So yeah, it's kind of funny. I got to see all that stuff before anyone, like just knowing the family,
Like you knew of the or like the quick
the
stop
original ending, also that no one saw for the longest time, where he actually gets killed at the end in a robbery. In Clerks.
I heard that, but I heard it like within the last like year or so. Like I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was on the copy, like that he gave his family that I saw originally. Yeah, it was like the third copy of Clerks ever made. I had it for like a long time, and then it got stolen from me because I had like borrowed it and some asshole stole it
you never
from
got
me.
that shit back. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't mine. It was theirs, and unfortunately, through it, Damien loaning it to me and it getting stolen from me, it was lost forever. But I mean, it's just a DVD. It was a VHS. I mean, copy over. It wasn't like some official release or anything, but. Came off the original master. It was a copy off the original master.
Yeah.
With the original ending. Not as a side piece or anything. Yeah. So.
Right.
Crazy small world. Welcome to New Jersey.
Yeah. Exactly. Jersey.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like I said, Predator. You can't go wrong with that. It's one of the greatest things ever. I mean, the fact that Jean-Claude Van Damme was cast as the Predator, and they had this weird, shitty alien suit that he was in, and he walked off the set. And also because he was short, he wasn't a big guy, because he wanted his face seen. He was never be seen. He walked off. Inadvertently, they get Stan Winston to make this Predator, this crazy monster, which they already started shooting the film. And that's part of the reason why you don't see the Predator in a lot of the movie at first, because they shoot all the scenes. They had to actually rework the movie a little bit.
Yeah.
And where the camouflage sort of came from, and it actually worked out for the best, and ends up being one of the greatest like monsters. And even to a certain extent, if you go into the lore, the Predator actually isn't as bad as he seems, but he's still a hunter and he's still killing people and whatnot. But
well, yeah. If you're looking at it, if you look at it from that aspect. I want to say it's up in the air, because anything that comes down to this planet, we're trying to root for humans because we're humans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So everything is going to be considered like a bad guy. But it would also be like us going to another planet as a sport for hunting. You know what I mean? Like,
but
it is
the
what
Predator
it is.
doesn't really kill innocent people, so you kind of like sort of side with him a little bit. He's only going after violent people usually, to a certain extent. People that are trained, like he wants a fair fight. It's not like he's just murdering everyone. I mean, I think there was a couple casualties here and there.
What was
to a certain extent they were inadvertent, but mostly was killing scumbags.
Oh, Kevin Peter Hall was the guy who played the Predator.
He died.
He was
unfortunately.
also Harry from Harry and the Hendersons.
Mm-hmm.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, he was
Predator's
huge.
Harry. He's Bigfoot. Yeah, he was like
huge.
He was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he was like 6'10".
Yeah, he was basically 7 feet tall. Yeah, he was. And he was very agile, and that suit took a big toll on him filming in that movie. But he did an excellent job. He was a great
and
actor.
And he was in the
way
second Predator movie.
What's that?
He was in Predator 2 as well. He was the Predator.
Yeah,
but he passed away.
Yep.
That's sad.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was Harry and the Hendersons, and there's some other stuff.
Big Top Pee-wee.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that.
Well, there's a lot not to remember about that movie. Not that it was terrible, but I mean, how often are you going back and rewatching that?
Yeah, well, wait. Not Big Top Pee-wee, but Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I've seen within the last year.
Yeah. I mean, that's an all-time classic. That's an all-time
Yeah.
classic. I mean, how
Yeah.
can you not go
Big
into
Top,
that one?
not so much.
Yeah, yeah, Big Top, not so much. Like I said, it's not a terrible movie, but it's not something you're going to rewatch unless you're doing
Sure.
some sort of crazy Pee Wee marathon. But
Which
then I
we
have to
might
start and
to
question
do.
your sanity a little bit, just a little bit.
I just said which we might have to do. We might have to do a Pee Wee marathon.
Maybe we might have to do that. Maybe we'll put a live stream of us watching it, right?
Yeah, you know what? Maybe we can get a hold of the original TV show that had like Lawrence Fishburne as like the cowboy. You know?
Cowboy Curtis.
Yo.
Yeah, I should not know that.
So
I'm pretty sure that was his name in the show.
Oh yeah. So those were like the non-horror, even though Predator does have horror elements, like the suspense
It does.
and the thrill, you know.
But, yeah, it's more of an action movie though.
Yeah, well, I think it's one
Yeah.
of like the greatest action movies ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and right up there with Terminator 2. I would say the first Terminator. A lot of people say it's a horror movie. I see horror elements, but
I was going to bring that up. But I feel like that I don't want to go into that. I don't want to ruin any episode. You know what I mean with that, like, yeah. But Terminator 1 could be. We talked about it a little bit, but yeah, that's why I changed my mind on that one. I didn't bring. Well,
and
up.
I know a lot of people always make the comparison between Terminator and Predator, like they do Alien and Predator, and I just think Terminator 2. I just have more nostalgic feel for, although I think Predator might be a more interesting movie. You know what I mean? Terminator 2 definitely has its moments.
I actually have more nostalgia towards Predator than I do T2, even though I love T2 and I think it's one of the greatest movies made. But I have more nostalgia towards Predator just because of Arnold and the rest of the cast. Like, I was a huge fan of Carl Weathers and Jesse Ventura.
Yeah.
And then you had Bill Duke was the black guy, the one other black guy in there, and some people know Bill Duke from Commando. He was one of the bad guys.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Like
Fucking
Arnold did a lot of
Commando.
movies with them, and then there was Sonny. I want to say Sonny Liston, but that's not his name. I can't think of his name. It's I don't remember. He was the Indian guy, and he like, it's just the machismo of that movie. I mean, like, I'm like at my age now. I just turned 39, so when I grew up, like, I'm right on that cusp of, like, I consider millennials younger, but some people consider people around my age still millennials. I don't. But, like,
right.
I'm in that cusp of, like, you either grown up like very masculine or you're not so, you know what I mean? Like, not so. And I think I'm like part of that dying breed of men that I still considered, even, you know, I mean, we all have our demons and we all have our issues of still bullied, you know what I mean? But, like, in a way, a lot of that made me, like, lean towards more of the machismo stuff, you know, if you want to call it that.
I think because now we're being vilified for it.
Yeah,
because we enjoy
exactly.
watching these movies where a bunch of people get killed and the action and explosions and, like, you know, basically the Expendables.
Yeah.
You know, like, the
muscles
Expendables
are bad.
not,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
you're not
even
gonna
though I
see
was
the
never that guy,
Expendables-
like, I just, you know.
No. But you're never going to see the Expendables on any award show besides, like, Spike TV's, like, Men's Choice Award,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And they probably win every category.
I don't even know if they're going to do that ever. Like, they would never do anything like that ever again, the way that society is.
Not today, no. Oh, the guy was Sonny Landham. He played Billy.
So, yeah, Sonny Lyndham. That's what. Yeah, that's why I was like, Sonny, listen, that was a boxer, but
Yeah.
Billy, yeah.
Billy.
Which is one of the greatest scenes, like, manly scenes in Predator, is, like, when he goes to square up, you know, with the Predator. He, like, drops his weapon, he like drops his vest, and he's got that big fucking commando knife, and he cuts his chest, and he's just like, "Rah!" You know, like, and they don't really show it, which is cool. You know, they just left it that, and you just hear Billy scream in the background. You know, the Predator just gutted him, you know.
Yeah, oh, he definitely took care of him easily.
And then that's where in Predators, the, like, sort of reboot ish whatever they did is where the Asian guy, the Yakuza guy, they kind of, when he stands off the Predator with the sword, that's kind of like a throwback to that scene.
Yeah, yup.
It's like an homage.
Nice little tribute.
Yeah. But that was a badass scene. That movie had its issues, but it definitely had some badass scenes.
Oh Yeah,
But,
yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons I'll still watch
yeah.
like the Fast and Furious movies, like story.
I
I
was
don't
just
care.
talking about them with someone. I'm like, they are really trash movies, but they're still entertaining.
Fuck yes,
Like,
they are.
you know what I mean? Like, you can sit down and you watch them. They're not the worst movies ever made. They're not great. They're trash movies, but you still watch them and they're still entertaining. Like,
Dude,
it's just
I
so
get to see
funny that you
cars.
said that too. I thought I was one of the few people that thought that.
No, dude. I mean, listen, and like The Rock, because like I'm a wrestling fan, and I used to love The Rock as a wrestler, and I think I'm so glad the highest paid actor in Hollywood is an ex-wrestler, and I'm so glad. I know it sounds dumb because I'm not like a super political guy, but the president of the United States is in the WWF Hall of Fame. Like,
Yeah, well, The Rock he's a throwback to those old machismo, masculine actors, but he also does
Yep.
a lot of
Comedy
like kiddie
and-
films and comedies. So
Yeah.
you see like the softer side of him, but like I really do enjoy that he's like does the movies sometimes what he does because it's a throwback to my childhood growing up on a lot of those also shitty, awesome action movies back in
Like,
the day.
I'll
On top of
watch
the
him-
horror.
I'll watch him in Jumanji,
Yeah.
and I'll laugh. And yeah, he's good with Kevin Hart. They work off each other and stuff like that. But like, movies like Faster that he was in, like
Yeah,
the movies that weren't super
excellent
big.
movie. Yep.
Great movie. Great
Excellent
movie.
movie.
And it's funny that we just mentioned
I actually own that movie. I bought that on Blu-ray. That's how much I liked it.
I have it as well.
Yeah.
It's funny that we mentioned it because before we go to the last film, when we're talking about machismo, Tropic Thunder is one of my favorite comedies of all time.
Yeah, see, now, if we were doing, like, that would make an honorable mention if it wasn't so late in our lives. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
the movie, you'll never see that movie again.
Nope.
If anyone
Robert
watches
Downey
the
Jr. in blackface. Come on.
well, it's funny that you bring that up because if anyone watches the Joe Rogan podcast, which I really like, and it's either going to get a love or hate in the comments for that, but
Yeah.
he actually had Robert Downey Jr. on his show, and it was one of the best interviews I've ever seen. And he just they just sat there and talked like they were friends, like we are, just bullshitting and having fun. And it was a really great interview. And actually, Joe Rogan did an interview with Rob Zombie like that also too. So if anyone enjoys Rob Zombie, whether his music or movies, and want to see a good interview with him, that's not like the other generic bullshit and more than just 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Like Joe Rogan podcast has a really good. I think it's almost 2 hours, or it might be 2 hours.
Joe Rogan's very good at getting guests to open up and feel comfortable like they're having a regular conversation
and
because
just be
they're
themselves.
having a regular conversation. And that's actually why I like his podcast. And like, yeah, some people give him shit or they don't like it or they don't like the format or whatever.
Yeah.
But
or
you
they
know
don't like
what?
how he doesn't push certain guests a certain way, but that's not what he's trying to do. He just wants you to see the other side.
Yeah.
He doesn't want it to be
Absolutely.
his job to push to a certain extent. I mean, he has certain guests on that he pushed back with here and there, but he just wants to talk to everyone and learn about everyone, not necessarily
tell
always about
stories
what they're spewing out. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. All right, so we got our non-horror out of the way.
Actually, real quick before we get into that, just go back to The Rock. I have to note this, especially since you're a wrestling fan. The Rock is what Hulk Hogan wanted to be. If you remember all those really crappy Hulk Hogan movies back in the day.
Suburban Commando, Nanny, Thunder in Paradise.
Yep.
Yeah, but Hollywood was not accepting of Hulk Hogan because if Hulk Hogan would have waited 3 more years and he would have went under Terry Bollea instead of Hulk Hogan, I think he would have been a massive star.
Yeah, I don't know, but those movies were just really bad, though. He should have picked his movies a little better, too, though.
Have you seen The Tooth Fairy?
No, I haven't, but I know it's terrible.
I mean, dude, one of The Rock's early roles besides Scorpion King, he was in the sequel to Get Shorty, which is, I think it's called Too Cool or Be Cool. And
Yeah,
he
I've
plays
seen it.
like, yeah, he's like that bodyguard for Vince Vaughn, but he's like a gay Samoan.
Yeah,
And he
it's
has,
actually
the
pretty
cowboy-
funny.
Oh, it's fun. It's hilarious, but the movie isn't that good, you know?
No, it has its moments where it's a little funny. It's
Yeah,
worth
yeah.
watching once. It's one of those movies where it's worth watching once and having a little fun with it, but not
But
exploring it too much.
his career could have turned out like Hogan's if he would have picked shitty movie after shitty movie, or bomb after bomb.
Yeah, but I think The Rock just had that something extra though that Hogan didn't have though.
Now, I do like his earlier movies like Walk Tall or Walking Tall, and
That's a
what was
great
the one he
fucking
did
movie.
with? Excellent. What did he do with Sean William Scott? The Rundown.
Yeah,
Oh
that
my
was a
god,
terrible movie,
hilarious.
but it was entertaining.
Dude, Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, no, I'm
Like-
just saying it was a terrible movie, but it was super entertaining. And Christopher Walken's an awesome bad guy in pretty much everything. Like,
He,
it's pretty
he was
hard
in-
to it's pretty hard to name a bad Christopher Walken role. I couldn't even think of one off the top of my head. I'm
Oh,
sure someone.
I got one. He was the bad guy in like the Country Bears movie,
What?
the Country Bears Jamboree. You know,
Like the
They,
animated guys, the little like blowing on the
Yes.
jugs. Those guys.
Yes, they had their own movie. And
Oh my
Christopher
god!
Walken,
I mean,
he
I'm
was
sure
the
I've seen
bad
it. I just
guy.
don't remember it.
He was the bad guy. And at the end, the Country Bears, they get their jamboree back, and like they're carrying them out through the
You know
crowd.
what? You know what? That may be a terrible movie, but Christopher Walken was probably amazing in it.
If you're gonna watch the movie, you're watching it because of Christopher Walken, okay? But as he's being carried out of the crowd, the last thing he says in that movie is, "I'll get you, Bears."
You know what? So that makes your point invalid. I said you can't find Christopher Walken being a bad guy, is what I said. I didn't say bad movie.
I'm sure because he's like Nicolas Cage, dude. He's been in everything. I'm sure there's some stinkers out
All
there.
right, we're
I mean,
covering
dude,
we're covering mostly horror movies, but we are going to have a Nicolas Cage episode. I demand it.
Yeah, well, we should just cross-reference every Nicolas Cage for Christopher Walken movie and just go back and forth. He was in Heaven's Gate. He was in Heaven's Gate.
I don't remember that.
Okay,
know
well, if you want to waste 4 hours of your life, go ahead and watch that piece of shit.
I'll cross that off and call it a note. So on that note, though, we will get into our last movie and wrap this up here. So my last pick, I kind of mentioned it earlier a little bit. We got really sidetracked, but in a good way. I think this has been really entertaining for everyone. I think everyone is
absolutely.
enjoying this. But so I mentioned 3 moments that scared me, and honestly, the first 2 I kind of sort of forgot about. We did talk about the Jason one earlier, so I did remember about that one. But the Halloween one definitely, jumped in my brain again while we were talking, live here. But The Exorcist, just straight up from 1973, Linda Blair, her face still to this day creeps me the fuck out. There's no other way to say it. To this day, if I watch that movie, which is a phenomenal movie, it's amazing. But
was done
I
very
have
well.
trouble going to sleep because I'll see her face like when I close my eyelids. Like her face is so goddamn creepy, it bothers me to this day. I'm not afraid to say that.
Did you? Okay, here's the thing. I know I saw it when I was younger, and it did scare me. But did you see the re-release with the footage that they added in?
I was actually going to say something about that, but I wanted to short what I was saying. I'm kind of hit and miss with that. It's kind of like a Star Wars thing. Almost, you could have like left it alone. You didn't have to
Absolutely.
add stuff to
it.
it.
Didn't need it.
It
But the
didn't need it, but I
backwards
don't
walk-
think it. I don't think it hurt it though either. You know what I mean?
No.
But it
backwards
didn't make
walk
it any
down the
better.
stairs. No, no. That
Yeah.
movie was great the way it was. It didn't need anything, but they
Yeah.
didn't go overboard. They didn't
No.
have like digital
Yeah.
tauntauns running in the background. You know what I mean?
Actually, the
Fucking
face and the
George
walls
Lucas.
that you saw should be Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah.
I think that would make Exorcist a lot scarier. Instead of the demon face we just see Jar Jar Binks everywhere. I think that
They
would make
should
the
have just
movie better.
replaced. They should have just replaced the old priest with Jar Jar Binks. You know, like the power of Christ compels you. You know, like that would have been perfect.
Yeah, no,
But
but
the
no,
scene
yeah,
where she
going
runs
back
down
to the
the
stairwalk.
stairs.
That stairwalk was creepy as fuck. It really was.
Creepy, fucking creepy. God damn it! I'm
Oh,
32
God.
years old and I can't look at that shit, dude.
So we're in the same boat. There's something about that movie that creeps us both out still to this day, and it was made in 1973. I mean,
Yep.
it's a phenomenal movie. There's really, I mean, it's not much to talk about. Girl gets possessed, priest fights demon, but the way they did it was really good. It was a little slow, but not in a bad way. They built up the suspense and the effects. They did it right. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a boring slow. Like, it was like a slow,
No.
gradual build. And then the
Kinda-
movie hits you, and then there's only like maybe a half hour or so, 40 minutes left of the rest of the movie. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, like the third act.
yeah, the third act really just
You're
like
hooked.
took it home.
You're hooked by then.
Yep. you're all in. You know, you really feel for it. And then they made the sequel, which was probably one of the worst travesties of a movie ever.
But they got back on track with the third one.
Well, and that brings us into the third one, just as honorable mention, which we were talking about earlier. We were talking about Brad Dourif with Chucky. He was actually in that movie as the priest, and he did an excellent job there.
And I do want to correct myself from earlier. It was Alien 4 and Resurrection, and the reason a lot of people don't remember he was in that because a lot of people didn't see that movie.
Well, or they did, and it wasn't the greatest. It's Alien 4. I mean, I got the Alien box set. I've watched it a handful of times, but it's just one of those movies. They tried to introduce too many aliens in that, you know, with the different animals, and I know they did that a little bit with the third one too, but it's just
1 and 2.
Too much.
We'll keep it.
Yeah, it's too much.
But,
and then had Winona Ryder's character was kind of dumb, like in the movie.
Yeah, she was.
I don't want to get into it. We'll do that another time when we talk about alien stuff. I mean, that's a given, but.
Oh, because there's tons of great horror movies that revolve around aliens. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we got so many movies to cover, but I mean, that's one of those. We want to stick to harder movies that people may not have seen or more cult classics, and then we'll get into like the more mainstream stuff later. But that's definitely something.
I feel like we can cover like the not so well known stuff. And every episode, we're going to end up referencing the well-known stuff.
Yeah.
So we don't even have to necessarily give them their own episodes, even though we probably will come Halloween time.
The Alien series should get its own. It's that good, and the monsters are good. You know what I mean? Like that first one is legitimately a horror movie. You say what you want about the Alien series, it's really sci-fi. But that first one really is a horror movie. Like
Alien, horror movie all the way. Yep.
Aliens,
I
the
agree.
sequel, is a straight up action movie, and there's no it's not a bad thing. It's a phenomenal movie. It's amazing. It's like Terminator 1 and 2. It's like two totally different movies, even though they have some similar characters and
or
similar
Evil
ideals.
Dead 1 and 2.
Yep.
I mean, they're both horror movies, but you could definitely tell the tone
Evil Dead
shift.
2 and Army of Darkness.
Yeah,
I know, get you in a rabbit hole on that one. I know. I see more of that, but you don't. We'll get into that another time, but yeah.
And I'm not saying, I just want to say, like, I'm not saying I don't like Army of Darkness. I like it for what it is. Like, it's comedy, it's goofy, but when two of your favorite movies are Evil Dead 1 and 2, and a third one's coming out? No fucking way. And then you see Army of Darkness, you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not Evil Dead. Like, damn it. I'm so disappointed.
So just a recap of my movies. I picked Monster Squad. I picked just zombies in general, but it was more limited to the Night of the Living Dead series and the Return of the Living Dead series. Even they're two very different series. One's more realistic, and the other one is more comical and fun. And they're different types of zombies, and they're amazing.
We will be doing a full episode on
yes.
Return of the Living Dead because it's one of my favorites.
And I have Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the Evil Dead series, which we got into again here, and The Exorcist. And then you had
but then you also mentioned your like non-horror movies.
Well, I was gonna get into that. Yeah, I picked Toxic Avenger and Predator, and then we talked about some other stuff. But
yeah, and mine are just like stereotypical big three. You know what I mean? Friday the 13th, Child's Play, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Obviously, for like horror movies that influenced me when I was younger into what I like today, those were the big ones. Tombstone, it just got me into films in general, like horror, comedy, anything. It was Tombstone. And American Psycho, because I think it was the first movie that made me kind of actually think. And I'm not saying movies never made me think, but the fact that I actually rewatched it immediately after it was over, like that.
Well, that is something we didn't get into earlier with it, but that is a movie where you can rewatch over and over, and you see something else, or you see it at a different like view in your head. Especially if you let time go by, as you get older and mature, and maybe your opinions differ a little bit. You might see it a different way. Like there's a lot of different things, especially if you start reading fan fiction or just theories on the movie online, and then you watch it after reading, you're like, oh yeah, I totally see their idea. I would never notice it before. That's definitely one of those movies.
Oh, and that movie even got a shit sequel with I think Mila Kunis.
Mila Kunis, yeah, and then
Yeah.
Professor was William Shatner. That she
Yeah,
was
that was
obsessed
garbage.
with. Yeah, it's pretty bad. I
Fucking-
mean, it's worth a watch for her because but
Oh yeah, but don't
Terrible
compare
movie.
those. Don't compare American Psycho to that
Nope.
garbage.
Nope,
So
definitely not at all.
this is something that we're gonna be putting out. This was an introduction episode. It's something that we're going to be putting out every week. Our first real episode we will be recording Monday night, and I'll just give a quick preview. We're gonna be comparing two movies, and they have to do with serial killers. 1980's Maniac and 1986's Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. And we may talk about the remake of Maniac because, it's still Maniac. And we want to discuss why one movie was hated by critics and the other one was praised and won awards, even though basically it's the same setup. Just keep an eye out on the Serial Killers Academy page. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Patreon. We have merch, we have shirts, we have this, we have that. But keep your eye out for this, because this is going to be fun conversation every week. Nice little escape from reality. I'm going to let Wolfman close this out. My name's Gray. Thank
sorry.
you guys. Oh, you're good.
Yeah, I had a generally great time doing this. I'm glad we decided to get this through. I know we both talked for a little while how I wanted to do a lot of reviews with my own website and stuff, but I think this is cool. It's something separate. I can kind of focus on the other site with more gaming and stuff and whatnot, and keep my moviness over here. So I really thank you, Gray, for letting me in this. I hope everyone enjoyed this. If you want to follow me more personally, Wolfman, it's Silver Bullet Streaming on YouTube and Twitch, and at Bullet Streaming on Twitter. And I mean, you're not alone out there. There's people like you, or like us, I should say, all over. So
I did want to mention, I'm going to be putting up, I'm going to be putting up Wolfman's information on our Facebook and on our Instagram. So if you want to check out his Twitch, you want to check out his individual YouTube channel, or you want to get to know him a little better, I will be putting that information on our Facebook pretty much as soon as these episodes drop. So just keep an eye out for that. And like I said, if you've never seen Twitch streams before, they are always fun, especially with a good personality behind the camera, playing the right game. You'll get sucked in. So I'm definitely going to have his information up on our social media accounts. And just stay tuned. We will be letting people know a couple days in advance when the next episode will be dropping. Obviously, we're recording Monday night. We will have a pretty much set schedule, so you can at least expect to hear this possibly every Tuesday night. It'll be released.
the first of many more to come has just about finished.
Yeah, no, look, we could tell them, look, Santa Claus isn't real. Okay, no, that's not what. We're actually doing this over the phone. I live in a bunker in the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania, and he lives about 2 hours south of me. And this is why this first episode is strictly a podcast, but coming soon, it will probably be a video podcast. So we will still offer the audio as podcast, but you will actually be able to see our faces.
Yeah, you'll be able to go to YouTube.
Video.
It'll be up on YouTube, and then you'll have an audio-only version on wherever he posts it, on like iTunes or Spotify or whatever,
Oh, man, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
We got Anchor, we got Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, like literally anywhere that you can hear podcasts, you're going to hear our wonderful voices talking about things that you want to talk about. Not politics or religion or anything like that. Just straight up.
As little as
horror movies and
possible,
good
unless it
time.
deals with the immediate,
Right. If we're talking
because we
about
want to keep that
politicians,
separate. We want people. This would be their escape from all the bullshit and the left versus right and all that crap out there. We just want to have fun with this.
if we bring up politicians, it's because they were trying to take away our horror movies or they were trying to ban. You know what I mean? But this year's an election year, and I could give two shits less. You know, I know it sucks to say, but my little world where I'm at, this is the things that I enjoy. This is what makes me happy. And hopefully when you guys get to listen, it'll make you happy too. So,
All right, I guess that's
I
about
am
wraps it
Gray.
up, right?
Yeah, that's it. I'm Gray,
I'm Wolfman.
and you'll be hearing from us again very soon. Good night, guys.
Good night.